Welcome to this 8th video in our series of videos called the DNA problem. The name and subject of this video is how the environment does not change DNA. Some people would say surely the environment does change DNA. When we talk about changing DNA here, we say the environment must change the nucleotides in DNA. And I just remind you at this point that these videos are building on what's been said in the previous videos. So if you have some question about that, it'd be good to make sure you've gone over the earlier videos about that. It wouldn't take you, less than an hour to go through all of them. We want to take as an example for this a quote from the University of Oregon. No special bone to pick with the University of Oregon. I don't know if I owe them an apology or not. First university that I got online looking for this and found it. I'm sure there's many universities that would have the same type of thing posted on their website, taught in their science classes and given in their science lectures. But in this case, the honors go to the University of Oregon. And what follows is a quote, verbatim text from a lecture posted on their website. And at the end, I'll give the link of where that's found. Upright walking was a response to environmental changes in East Africa at the time. The rainforest was turning into steppes and grasslands due to global cooling. This reduced the apes' habitat and drove 2/3 of their species into extinction. Some primates developed arboreal lifestyles and became the gibbon lineage. Others developed an upright stance as a survival characteristic, to see over tall grasses, and spent more time on the ground. Again, this is from the University of Oregon. Appears real small, the whole complete link to the website this was taken off of. Here it's in bigger letters, which if you pause you might be able to actually type it in. That would, those 3 lines would all be in one line with no spaces. If you will email me at thednaproblem@gmail.com if you would wish to have that link, I would make sure you get the complete working link, but you may very well be able to take it off this video. So their basic pretense and the things that we want to go into, or their basic statement is upright walking was a response to environmental changes. When we say response to environmental changes, that means there is a change, first of all, in the environment, and then there is a response. And the response is defined here as upright walking. So according to their proposition, or what they're stating here, is the environment changes the DNA. The environment changes cause DNA changes in the genotype. Now they don't specifically say that there, but I'm explaining that because we know that the DNA, the genotype, especially when it comes to all the parts and the functionality of an organism needed to walk upright as a normal mode of movement, we know that has to be encoded into the genotype for it to show up in the phenotype. So their proposal in the view of modern science is that environmental changes translate over and cause DNA changes in the genotype, which then cause changes in the organism or in the phenotype. That is basically a false statement, or definitely a false statement. We have looked at, you can look at the previous video to this, does the environment change DNA? Yes. The environment changes DNA in random ways, not in ways that would make it, as they say, be able now to walk upright and be better equipped. It does not bring information about the environment. The environment, this is a false statement. We've ruled it out. What do we have? Since it is proposed, in other words, they're proposing this. So since it's proposed that changes in the environment change the organism, let's take a what-if look at what would be involved in such a feedback loop. I'm calling this a feedback loop because the organism is living in an environment, and according to this statement that they make. The environment changes, and that somehow or other causes a response in the organism so that now, tra-la, it walks upright. So let's take a what-if look at this. The first part that we would have to do if we wanted to have a response to a change in the environment such as this stated of rainforest and grasslands is we would have to have a statement of the problem. And the problem is very simple. There's no room in shrinking rainforest, but there is room in growing grasslands. That's the basic problem that they've explained. So two, we would have to consider possible solutions. Possible solutions, and I've just thrown out some here just to say that there might be more than one solution to this, but one possible solution is let's grow spikes for protection. If we're let's respond by growing spikes for protection. Let's respond, B, by developing ability to live in burrows. Or C, let's respond by being able to walk upright. And so then you make the decision, and 3, you choose a solution, you say, okay, let's go with walk upright. So then, fourth step is you would have to design the phenotype elements. The phenotype is what we refer to the characteristics of an organism, is the phenotype, the visible, useful, notable, observable characteristics of an organism. So you'd have to design the characteristics or phenotype elements required to walk upright. What is some of those elements? Well, A, you would have to design changes to bones. Maybe even add some new bones, maybe get rid of some bones. But design changes to bones, to the spine, to the femur, to the hip socket, the toes, feet, ankles, etc. You would have to decide changes in the muscles that are required. And there would have been changes in muscles in the feet, and the legs, and the back, and the arms, and the neck, etc. And C, the bones would need spaces and connecting points for muscles. You can't have a muscle if there's a bone there. You can't have a bone there if there's a muscle there. And those muscles have to hook onto the bones in good leverageable ways, if I could call them that. D, you would have to rewire nerves for adequate feedback to the brain for upright walking. Those of us who have, the majority who have experience walking, know that you need to feel where the ground's at, and if you're stepping on your toe or you're on your heel, and sense that you're moving forward or you're not moving forward, or you're going left or you're going right, and so forth. Rewire nerves for adequate feedback to the brain for upright walking. And then E, you would have to have changes to the circulatory system so that there's sufficient blood flow, or blood is available for new and expanded use of muscles. Maybe, you know, the muscle that we didn't use much, an ape wouldn't use much crawling around on the ground, and now he's going to walk upright. Oh, he's going to use a different muscle. So those muscles are going to need blood to get the oxygen and the energy to them to work. And F, you have to make sure, you kind of getting all these things working together here, you have to make sure that all this functions in all positions, in all actions. For example, it has to function when you're standing, it has to function when you're sitting, has to function when you're laying down, it has to function when you're walking, has to function when you're running, has to function when you're stooping down, etc. So once all these functionality issues are settled, and let me just pause right there. Let's say all those functionality issues are settled. It would be interesting to know if the University of Oregon or some other university, we could bring in an ape that had no ability to walk upright and say, could you guys just kind of, you got an orthopedic thing here and neurologist and, you know, all of this, could y'all guys just do a series of operations on this ape so that then he could, and it would, not only could, but would walk upright. And if you have to, we'll, you know, give you a male and female and breed them and do part of it. I mean, whatever you have to do. No, could they do that? That would be an interesting challenge there. But the point, what I want to point out here is what DNA brings to this equation. In other words, people way back in Darwin's time speculated that just the environment kind of affected animals, and that's the way they changed, you know. And somehow or other science has kind of hung on to that idea, even though we have DNA. What has DNA changed about it? Well, once we decided once all the functionality issues were settled that we've gone over, and again, that was a brief description. It's a lot more complex than that. I don't have a medical degree. You may probably figure that out by now. But in medical degrees, they would probably talk about specialists for each one of those areas, different specialties. But once all these functionality issues are settled with DNA and what we know about DNA, then you would have to encode all that phenotype functionality, you would have to encode it into nucleotide codes expressed in the T's, A's, C's, and G's of DNA in germ cells, and germ cells are the ones that we use to pass on functionality and information from one generation to the next within a population. So you have to encode it. And let me pause right here a moment. At the current time, I don't think we actually know how to go. I'm quite sure that we don't know how to go through the DNA and say, here's where we're specifying that that muscle is going to hook here. This is where we specify the width of that blood vessel. We're still very much working on understanding how this information would be encoded in the A's, TA's, C's, and G's of DNA. But since this little paragraph suggests, scientific paragraph made by scientists, suggests that the environment changed and then the apes responded by the changes in evolution to walk upright, then all that functionality, however they're responding, would have to be expressed and encoded into T's, A's, C's, and G's of the DNA of germ cells. A question here is, if it takes 3 nucleotides, and we've covered that in one of the earlier videos, if it takes 3 nucleotides to specify one amino acid, how many nucleotides need to change to specify all this new functionality? Certainly thousands, tens of thousands, I dare say millions of nucleotides would have to change to have this functionality, this change in functionality. Of utmost importance, though, even after we've gone that far and we've managed to get all this functionality as a response, and it's been encoded into, or we figured out how to encode it into the nucleotide sequences, of utmost importance would be the implementation schedule. Why do I bring that out? Well, first of all, science and the theory of evolution is not zap and there, we have an ape and he walks through a chamber and walks out the other side. I mean, we put him in a chamber and he all of a sudden can walk out the other side. These are gradual changes. So of utmost importance would be the implementation schedule. Which do we do first? The muscles or the bones or the nerves, and do we do parts of it together? I mean, there can be obviously many things happening at once, but again, there's no Big Bang theory that I know of for these types of changes where you just say poof and now there's upright walking. It sounds like it from the paragraph of the University of Oregon, but coming down to more reality in tune with what is proposed for mutations causing evolution, then there would have to be an implementation schedule. Why do I mention that? In what order can these changes be made? Okay, the implementation schedule is, in what order can these changes be made so that every step of the way, these organisms that are evolving are favored by natural selection over the organisms that are not evolving. Okay, so every stage of the way, we kind of come out, if we were, a lot of us had experience with versions of software, no? And version 1, and version 1 comes out and natural, the environment, everything has to say, okay, good, we like that. Then you come out version 2, and how many versions do you wish to have to go from non-upright walking to upright walking? But the schedule, in what order can these changes be made so that at every step of the way, these organisms that are evolving are favored by natural selection, at least not killed off. They're allowed to multiply over the organisms that are not evolving. And again, in the proposition of this, we have a scarcity of resources, a scarcity of rainforest. So the sooner they can get out into the grasslands, I'm not vouching for that proposal, but according to the proposal that's set out, that they would have to, the sooner the better, no? It sounds like in that. But that they're evolving are going to be favored by natural selection over the organisms that are not evolving. Okay? Now at this point you might protest somewhere and say, hey, this sounds a lot like design. Relax. Remember, this was just a what-if exercise, exploring the possible implications of the environment causing phenotype modifications, which is the proposal of the science lecturer of the University of Oregon and many other science lecturers all around in universities everywhere. So this is a what-if exercising. We know that it's just a what if exercise, because the environment changes do not cause DNA changes in genotype that would cause organism changes in phenotype that have any that flows any information through here that would make it more fitted to that environment. We know that's not true. We know that's not happening. That's not what we understand in DNA. What we understand, and so we can relax about the other what if scenario, what we do understand is that we have random mutations. Random mutations. They cause random DNA changes in the genotype, which then we propose cause upright walking in the phenotype. So the motor is not the the environment changing, it's just random mutations. And again, there's a couple different types of mutations. The random mutagens from the environment, and the changes just in the normal mutations in the process of duplicating DNA. So our proposal is, all that other was an exercise in what if, and kind of to show all the things that would be implied if we were to take as true what the University of Oregon proposed. Random mutations, we know random mutations cause random DNA changes in genotype, and those random DNA changes in genotype cause random changes in phenotype, which the theory proposes, theory of evolution would say that's where you get upright walking from. So what we have in this case, actually, that we would have to comment on, is an unbelievable synchronization of transitions. And I will repeat that, just cool words. An unbelievable synchronization of transitions. What do I mean by that? Well, we have rainforest, a majority of rainforests that are going to a minority, in grasslands that are now becoming a majority. That is, they transition. So we have a transition going on. It doesn't specify, and I'm sure people can come up with a timeline with that. And really the amount of time doesn't matter much. The rainforest going to grasslands, there's a transition that's going on. At the same time, well, the rainforest to grasslands transition at each and every moment presents an environment. If you wanted to measure it in percentiles, you could say, okay, we've got 1% change from the rainforest state to the grassland state. And at that moment we go over, and again, it may not be symmetrical, but we have some changes in the organism. But it has to be such, and that's the synchronization, that whatever the transition is at between the rainforest to the grasslands, at every moment you come out with, and again, to use the software example, version 2 of an organism that is evolving towards upright walking, then that transitional grasslands, rainforest to grasslands, at that moment, whatever point it's at, whatever it looks like at that point, comes and look at this organism, whatever it looks like at that point, and it favors it, its selection on its current state. And then if you want to, and so it favors, what does it say here? At each and every moment favors selection of the current state of the random mutations that lead incrementally to the transition to upright walking. So again, I don't know if you want to do that over 5 million years or 50 million years. It really doesn't matter. It just has to be synchronized. So every time this organism has a change, whatever status the environment is going to come along and say, cool, I like that. That's good. Let's let it. Let's not have it die off. Let's let it survive, and let's let it reproduce. Click, click. Every click along the way, there's this synchronization that this changing environment likes this changing organism at every step along the way. So that is what we do have. If you are a college student, you might, out of habit, be tempted to ask, when is the due date on this? And I believe this video has served its purpose to clarify how the environment does not change the DNA nucleotide sequence. We have a web page, www.thednaproblem.com. You can email us at thednaproblem@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.